I think the biggest thing is that it's not about color. When it comes to faith and it comes to religion, it comes to God, there's no color in there.
That's right.
It doesn't come to color. These things mean nothing. They mean nothing to Hashem. They mean nothing to Torah. They mean nothing to Judaism, honestly.
I think a message is that people can look at us and go, well, look at that. Well,
Right.
big difference. That al tistakel b'kankan. Do not look at the
Right.
vessel. Ela ma sheyesh bo, except look what is inside. And you are my brother, my flesh and blood, and that's it. And that's the message that has to go out to missionaries who have an idea that they can come here to Eretz Israel.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Signing off as Mr. Black, Hitler's worst nightmare. Yeah. We gon' play it loud until they feel it. Yeah.
Joining me, Nissim Black, a top rap star for a very long time. And today he's huge and he has millions and millions of viewers on YouTube and live broadcasts. Nissim, I want to ask you a question, very direct. You've been in the music business for a very long time,
Right.
but you haven't been in the Judaism business for a very long time.
Right.
Your life has changed dramatically. I mean, 15 years ago, you were in a completely different place than you are today.
Right.
Where were you and how did you get here?
15 years ago. 15 years ago, I was actually a hardcore Christian in high school, actually. I say Bible-thumping Christian. That time I was involved in a youth ministry for the Union Gospel Mission, youth missionary group. And I was involved in every single Bible study group, leadership, and it was actually very good for me. Coming from the inner city, being exposed to a lot of violence and drug abuse and that type of thing, it was very important for me to be around, a healthy environment, to be able to cultivate, proper social skills and being able to have a proper understanding of just really how to move in life. So it was very good for me at the time. It also got me out of a lot of trouble. Prior to a missionary camp experience that I had in which I converted to Christianity. My first introduction to religion was Islam. My grandfather was a Sunni Muslim. So I used to pray 5 times a day and everything like that. He went to prison. And then, the streets just have you. So going along, being affiliated with a gang, Black Gangster Disciple Nation, GDN, Gangster Disciple Nation, that led to me being in a very, very vulnerable place, I guess, at least spiritually. Grandfather wasn't around. There was no religious thing at home. So I ended up going to this camp where I ended up converting. Probably saved my life at the time, to be honest. Probably saved my life.
It saved your life from drugs,
from the drugs and from the streets and from everything like that. It probably was. But as I continued to grow, I got older. Nothing from that would stick. You know what I mean? As you go, most people that know within that world, there's not a lot about ethics. There's no Masorah like we have. Nothing to really,
no tradition.
No tradition to really keep you. So you end up in a place where you can continue making it up as you go, type of thing. Interpreting things the way you want to interpret them. And so before long, I was back out, putting out rap records that were very, very detrimental, I feel like, to myself, but also to the community that I was around. And after a while, there was another artist who, made a diss track on me. And that led to a physical altercation, which eventually led to a kill or be killed situation.
What does that mean?
It means kill or be killed. It put me in a situation. A friend of mine,
like Tupac,
very similar in the sense of if I don't go and take them out first, then they're gonna come after me.
What a world!
Very, very scary place to be in. But the beautiful part about it is that being in such a situation gives you a real thinking moment, and it gives you the ability to make a serious cheshbon hanefesh. You really get to really weigh it out and think about it. And once it's real and your life is on the line, then you really start to think about is this who I really am? I was thinking to myself, how did I go from Bible study and being a part of the missionary groups and how did I go from that to being in this situation? So God made a miracle for me. 3 days after praying and crying and trying to figure out some other way out of the situation, the other guy called me. And after I got that call, I realized, after we were able to put things behind us, I realized that it was another chance to make a better decision. And so I got away from, a lot of my friends, and I just stayed home, and I prayed and I prayed and I prayed, and a lot of prayers. And I got to a place where I started to think back to when I was in Bible study group. Like, I had a lot of questions, and nobody ever answered them. It wasn't why you're there, right? You're not there to ask questions on the faith. You're there to learn, more about how to even bring other people to the faith. You're not there to really ask questions if you see something inside and to be able to ask a question. So what so ended up happening, I ended up being introduced to Rabbi Google. Rabbi Google had every answer to every shaila that I had, right? So I went on, and I think the first thing that I started to see was there were debates between creationist scientists and and secular scientists. That was the first thing, and that got me very interested. But then I had deeper questions. I grew up in a Jewish neighborhood, right? And I didn't know.
Is that Seattle?
In Seattle, in Seward Park area.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I grew up there. I would see people going. I used to walk through a shul. I was a young kid going to school every day and different things. But I never knew anything about Judaism. But I knew about Islam. I knew about Christianity. So I wanted to sort of figure out what's the differences. What do they believe in that? So I started searching and doing a lot of research. Another area I spent a lot of time on was the roots of Christianity, where it all began, right? I got very intrigued and very interested. So I started doing a lot of digging on there. And then I started getting into other pieces of manuscripts that, would be, I don't know how they would consider them today, pseudepigrapha or whatever, the Didache, some of the church fathers. And I started going really, really back and starting to figure out, like, hold on, this had nothing to do with this. So that led me to Messianic Judaism first. So I ended up going to a Messianic temple, which was very advanced for most of what you would see in Messianic Judaism. You walk in, looks like a real shul, beautiful on Kodesh. They read from the Sefer Torah. Most of the service was actually in Hebrew. People had it was like a interesting, for me it was a culture shock at the time. I was like, did I walk into what I thought I walked into? I didn't know. So I was like, wow, there's a lot of stuff I don't know. So I need to catch up. So I spent a lot of time on Chabad.org, which ended up leading me to going to a Chabad house on the east side. And so all the while I keep trying to play catch up. I'm starting to see that the authenticity, what I was really after, what I was looking for, was over here. And it wasn't over here, right? The more and more I grew in terms of Judaism, the further and further distant this place seemed to be from actual Judaism. And, I think the biggest thing for me was just having a longing to find what was the authentic way that God wanted us to serve him, wanted the world to serve him. What was that authentic way, right? One of the things that Jesus actually says over there, he says that the Pharisees sit in the seat of Moses.
Matthew 23.
Matthew 23. So he says that, and whatever they shall tell you,
whatever they
shall
do, you must do, right?
Right. So that always bothered me.
Really? That bothered you?
It bothered me, right? Because aren't they the bad guys, right?
Right.
So there's almost like this allegiance he's giving to, at that time, what we would say now is birthed into rabbinical Judaism. And it's like, but nobody's like, so if they have the authority, then how do the apostles have the authority now if these guys are the ones that are sitting in the seat of Moses? So, these things I found very, very hard to wrestle with. So at one point, I put all of the books together. I got a Quran. I had the few different versions of the New Testament, and I had a JPS Tanakh. And apart from Tanakh, I had a Chumash, and I started putting all these books together. 8 hours a day, I was going through all these different texts because I was really confused. And the thing that that stood out to me about the Tanakh at the time was the honesty of the story, right? There's so many ups and downs. Whenever you read the Gospels or whatever, it's just like this figure who was just great, nothing
Jesus
bad,
perfect.
and Jesus was perfect.
Once
There was
Paul
none of-
converts, he can't do a thing wrong.
right, exactly,
It's
right?
like-
Everybody's perfect. There's
Right.
no whatever, and so the honesty of the story of the constant ups and downs that Klal Yisrael was experiencing was my life story. You understand?
Wow.
That was my life story. So it really, really, I felt more connected. And being able to read it by myself was like even more powerful. So I made a deal with God. Like right before I started to really, go out on a limb and really go all out and start searching and really go on my journey, I made a deal with him. I narrowed it down to the Tanakh after going through all the different and I narrowed it down and I said like this. I put on the table, I said, God, we're going to make a deal. I'm going to read this book from cover to cover, and the only thing I want is your character. I want to know who you are. I want to know what you love. I want to know what you hate. I want to know. We're starting all over because what I thought I knew, I didn't know. So I never felt, coming from, Christian background, I never felt so much connection, to Moshe Rabbeinu, to Moses, or to David, or to, like, the stories were just popping out. They were coming out even more because I was seeing the struggle, and that resonated with me. So as I continue to progress, and one of the things that you can't ignore when you keep seeing inside the Torah is you come to a place where you start to realize, for the first time, I was waking up to see that all these things that he was talking, all these prophecies and all these beautiful words and sayings that I had heard, in the Christian group, that wasn't talking about the church. That was talking about the Jewish people. You start to see this unique relationship. And I always say like this, if you are best friends with somebody, you spend a lot of time with that other person, right? You will find yourself taking on a lot of the same characteristics as that other person. You'll start to laugh and enjoy the same exact things. You spend so much time together that you start to rub off on one another. I was spending so much time with Hashem, trying to find him, that with Hashem's interest became mine, and I fell in love with the Jewish people because I was reading inside the text. That's who Hashem loved. So it was a very, very powerful time for me. Sorry, I talked for a long time. I have
No.
I have rabbi syndrome.
So tell me about Rabbi Syndrome. When you were deep in the Messianic movement, when you were in there, what did you think of me?
Yeah, I was not a big fan of Rabbi Tovia Singer. No,
Okay.
for sure not. Because the truth was, you're not really ready to deal with honesty and truth until you get to a certain place.
Why not?
Why not? Because it makes you feel very vulnerable and open, and it's very, very hard to operate in that type of place.
Nissan, do you realize that every person listening to you right now is wondering, but this is the guy who was most vulnerable, who just walked away from anything he didn't believe in, including the hood,
Right.
including the street, including a different type of rap,
Right.
which is not kosher rap. The
Right.
content isn't. You walked away from that to walk to Christianity and then to go to the Messianic movement and embrace the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Right.
You're constantly leaving yourself vulnerable. It would have been easiest not to leave anything. So there's a dichotomy. Help me understand.
I think, like I said, you have to be in a certain place. Everything happens in levels, right? It started very early on with the indoctrination that is, and then Hashem does this amazing thing where he just like puts me in a place to where it's like, it's a reset button, I think the most powerful thing about the Judaism thing is that, maybe had I not got into that altercation, I would have never started praying. I would have never started, soul searching, start seeking. So then that put me in that place of vulnerability again, where it was like, God, what do you want from me? Type of thing. Things happen in layers. There were layers of truth. How did I be able to become a fan of Rabbi Tovia Singer? The layers of truth start to break off. So the first thing you start to get into is, obviously, I went from the holidays, that led me into Messianic Judaism. That was one layer peeled off. Then you start to see the importance of rabbinical Judaism, because even in the Messianic scriptures is nonstop. Paul uses it as an excuse to say, this is what I'm only came to talk about the resurrection of the dead. When he speaks about it in Acts, he uses it because he's obviously saying that he believes in Perushim. James tells him, says, hey, listen, we know you're not telling the non-Jews, so this is what you'll do. You'll make a sacrifice to show that you're still in the derech. You haven't gone off the derech. You haven't gone off the derech.
Circumcised Timothy, and then we know you're really
exactly.
Yerushalayim.
But the more and more I started learning about Judaism, these started to have different meaning to me. Before, they were just stories in the Bible. Then all of a sudden, hold on, Paul circumcises Timothy because his mother was Jewish. Was it not Jewish?
But that's all rabbinic, right?
It's all rabbinic.
How do you know you're Jewish by your mother?
Exactly.
So let me tell you, you are like so sophisticated that you did that. You know, like 99.9% of Christians wouldn't have even think about that.
Because when they go on the journey, they're not digging for everything. Because even in Christian commentaries, a lot of time quotes, midrashim and different things. And it's just like, where are they getting this stuff from? So when I started learning more about Judaism, I started to say, wow. So that was another layer letting you off and opening your heart to that certain, that vulnerability that you need to be able to accept emes. When I started going to the Chabad, we told him, listen, we believe in X and, but we want to come. He says, as long as you're not coming as a missionary and you come to learn, honestly, you're able to come. So, which was powerful. That was very, very much so it was powerful for us. So you start to peel back the layers, right? My heart was already right by that time. I was already ready to, and after that, I never went back. So.
And then you actually decided, you could embrace the Jewish faith, the Jewish nation, converted to Judaism.
Right.
We are sitting here in Eretz Yisrael, in the Holy Land.
Right.
We are in the place where almost all of Tanakh was written.
Right.
How did that come to be that you said, I want to be a Jew?
I think from the moment I started learning about Judaism, I wanted to be in Eretz Yisrael. Long before I was actually finished converting, I'm moving to Israel. My wife did not agree, but I'm moving. Somehow, some way, I'm gonna move. And whole story is actually a little funny. I got after we had finished converting, maybe a year after, I really started bringing up to my wife, how much I want to move to Israel. My wife, I don't know the language. I wouldn't know my way around. I don't know people there. Not happening. And I brought it up so much that it was like an illegal word to say in the house.
Really?
Israel, because she was like, no, I can't. She's not doing it. You have to take me there if I'll go visit, whatever. So I got to a place where it was illegal for me to bring it up. We're not moving to Israel. It's not happening. So I did a lot of tefillahs. I went out and I prayed every day, Hashem, open my wife's heart, I was really begging Hashem. It was so emes to me that we needed to be there. After converting to Judaism, it's one thing. You live in America, it's a beautiful thing, there's beautiful communities there, but there's no way to really immerse yourself inside of the heart of Yiddishkeit once you're here in the land. And everybody that's in Chutz La'aretz, they know it. Once you come here, it's a different story. It's a different vibe altogether. And I really wanted that. I wanted it for me. I wanted it for my children. Being of color, I wanted them to be in a place where they're going to also see other people of color, of faith, and the same faith as them, and things like that. So Israel was big for us for that purpose also. My wife still was not a fan, and I went, and I was in Uman one year for Rosh Hashanah. I spent a lot of time in his boat. It's like 4 hours, and I only davened on Eretz Yisrael, as in my heart was yearning so bad to move to Eretz Yisrael.
So Uman is Rav Nachman's caver, it's his grave in the Ukraine, where a lot of people go as a pilgrimage. They don't pray to the rabbi, they pray to God, but it's a place of inspiration.
It's a place of inspiration.
Yeah.
A month later, I was in London, and 7 days I was out on a speaking tour at a concert. 2 days after I was there, I was sitting in the living room. My wife said, you know what? I think we should move to Israel. It was just like that. And it was almost like it was her idea. It wasn't her idea. I had the idea, right? So the interesting part about it, where it kind of got a little funny, was for the whole year prior, I had filled out all the Nefesh Ben Nefesh paperwork, and I forged her signature on all the paperwork. That's good. So by the time
we'll edit that one out, okay.
So by the time she said, let's go, we had all the paperwork, we were ready to go. And she was actually happy I did it. But So in the end, we ended up moving, and maybe 3.5 months after that, we were on a plane. We left everything behind.
Baruch Hashem.
Everything behind.
Baruch Hashem. And
Yeah.
now we're together in Israel. Nasim, you talked about a person of color. I'm going to ask you this question straight away. There's a Church of God in Christ, Kojak, and they sent a bishop here. They sent a bishop here to Israel, and he's made it very clear that he feels he can have a special kesher, a certain connection with black Jews, 150,000 black Jews here, predominantly Ethiopian Jews, and because he says, I have African ancestry, and they have African ancestry, we have the same color. So then he's going to be able to bring them to disciples to Christ, meaning convert them to Christianity. What do you have to say to him?
I think, we should just stay in America. I think it should stay in America if he's coming here for that. More than welcome. And I have a affinity for Christianity in terms of the help and the friendship that they have provided to Israel and the Jewish people in terms of that. But when it comes to missionizing, it almost like defeats the purpose. I think the biggest thing is that it's not about color. When it comes to faith and it comes to God, these things mean nothing. They mean nothing to Hashem. They mean nothing to Torah. They mean nothing to Judaism, honestly. In terms of thinking that you're going to relate better to people because of the color of our skin, it's not the same struggle. I come from America. That's a different thing. We weren't brought there on planes and rescued and that was not a rescue operation that happened.
That's a slavery operation.
Exactly.
That's a very different kind
of operation. It's a whole different operation there. So already from a different we're already going to see things from a different standpoint. But where were they coming from? What were they coming from? They were coming from missionaries. They came here to get away from you, right? So by you coming here, if you're really looking to help, this community, then you'd stay away. Maybe help them in their struggle and help them continue to live Jewish lives. That's what they wanted to do. So if you feel like you're helping, that's the way to help. But it's definitely not to come here and be a part of the very thing that they were running away from.
I think a message is that people can look at us and go, well, look at that. Well, big difference. That al tistakel b'kankan, do not look at the vessel. Ela ma sheyesh bo, except look what is inside. And you are my brother, my flesh and blood, and that's it. And that's the message that has to go out to missionaries who have an idea that they can come here to Eretz Israel.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And especially at a time right now where race is such a hot topic and different things like that. And it definitely deserves a space. It deserves a space. It deserves to be talked about. But then, when it comes to faith, and it comes to religion, it comes to God, there's no color in there.
That's right.
It doesn't come to color.
That's
what I mean? So, especially in Judaism, when you have so many different backgrounds, Taimani, Mizrahi, you have Ashkenazim, you have Jews from Kurdistan, Jews from Iran, Iraq. Like, you can't now all of a sudden, it just doesn't give me any more of a connection with you because of the color of my skin when you're coming to bring faith into it. I already know what I believe in. I'm already very comfortable in what I believe in, right? So you coming to say that now because we're the same color, you know what I mean? Now I'm supposed to believe in what you believe in. So I think the whole thing's that.
אדון עולם אשר מלך בטרם כל